Thank you, and welcome back to the third episode of the new and improved Koptic Kave. This morning, I have with me a very special guest. He's going to talk about a topic that I am personally passionate about. I have Manny from the group Adkan. Manny, welcome and thank you for being on the show. Please tell us about yourself a little bit and about the group Adkan. As far as I know, you are the CEO/manager. Is that correct?
Yes, I am the new CEO. I just started my job about 3 weeks ago. Um, so, so hi, Mike. It's a pleasure to be on your show. My name is Manny. Live right next to the Dead Sea, between the Dead Sea and Jerusalem. It's a place called Kfar Adumim. I'm 40 years old. I have 4 kids between the ages of 12 and 3. No, now 4 actually. And I work at Atkan. In the past 2, I've done already more than 400, and I stopped counting after 400 days of being in the army. Usually I was most of the time in the northern sector. Can't get into specifics, but that's where I was. So before I worked at .con, I was like a school headmaster for a project of kids. It's called the Mechina. They finish high school, 8th grade, 12th grade. They go for a year, like a gap year, then they join the army. So I've done that for the past 3 years. Now I work at Adkan. So Adkan, for your listeners, if they don't know the name, Adkan is essentially an intelligence, civil counter-terror intelligence organization. Okay, so our motto is we hunt the haters of Israel. So who are we? We are hunters. That's what we do. We proactively fight anti-Semites. So unlike what you see normally, somebody, Greta, or that sweetheart, post post something on Facebook or Instagram, and people say, "Oh, what are you doing? That's not right." So we actively try to uh, find out what's going on in the flotillas. Just for the example's sake, about 3 years ago, we implemented a covert agent. Her surname was Ruth, not her actual name. It was on Israeli TV, 5 episodes, got high ratings. We inserted her into a flotilla and exposed Hamas's connection, PCPA, as the front of Hamas, uh, which is essentially for the past 15 years, a guy named Zahar Birawi. That's the guy's name.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, he's
So
connected to Hamas. I see pictures of him
exactly.
with
So
Ismail
ensure
Haniya.
listeners
Yeah.
exactly right. The IDF soldiers found documents in Gaza signed by Ismail Haniya showing that the PCPA is the front of Hamas. And for the past 15 years, those who go to freedom flotillas, essentially what they do is help Hamas and Hamas's monsters undermine Israel. It has about as much to do with civil rights and humanitarian aid as a fish has to do with bicycles. Absolutely nothing. And what we do is we expose it. We inserted a covert agent. She's from Denmark, and she filmed, from covert camera, everything that was going on there. And since we did that, authorities in Europe starting, I think not enough, and I think too late, but started noticing what does Hamas do in Europe, okay, through those flotillas. So that's what my organization does. We essentially fight counterterrorism by surveilling and implementing, or I forget the correct word in English. We insert covert agents, double agents to those organizations and bring them down from within. We're the only one who does that in the world. The IDF doesn't do it to certain organizations because they don't humanitarian aid and they don't do that, but we do. So we fight where nobody else will fight.
That is so cool, man. I was not expecting to hear that. So I have to ask a follow-up question to that. Because over the last few weeks I saw these clips on Instagram, and I think it might have been your group that added that put in the agent. So there was, I was watching these clips of somebody who infiltrated the flotilla organizations. And was it from a few years ago?
Yes.
Yeah, it must have been you guys then. It must have. That's so cool. Because you know what? Everybody was asking, where do I find the full documentary? Like, where can I watch?
So
Like,
if you want the full documentary, I'll send you through the WhatsApp the link so you can post it on this show. But it's
yes, please
essentially
do.
I'll do that, but it's essentially in Hebrew, but there's English subtitles, and a lot of it is in English because the person speaks English, doesn't speak
Right,
Hebrew.
right,
So I'll post it and you can show it's a 5 episode series, 1 hour an episode, so 5 hours in total.
right. That's awesome, man. That is so cool. Your organization's website says you have 5 departments: intelligence and fieldwork, research, legal, policy/administration, and media. How do you balance those functions, and which would you say is the most important function? My personal opinion is I'm leaning towards the intelligence, but I don't want to assume. I'd rather let you speak for yourself.
So the thing is that it's like asking what's the most important thing in a military unit. So this place operates a lot like a military unit, a military intelligence unit. I can't get into specifics for obvious reasons,
Of
but
course.
that's what we do. So imagine if you didn't. So the way we work is this: we gather evidence. We can gather evidence via drones. We can I just say when you spy with the camera and you can see what's going on. We put agents inside of organizations, we film and we gather everything, but we're not the police, we're not the authorities. So we
Right,
what we do is we write everything down. We have all the evidence and we give it shoot up already to the authorities so they can do the actual arrest. So that's what we do. When we bring an organization down, that's how we do it. If it's an organization abroad, so the idea is that you create so much media coverage that somebody will pay attention, which is what happened in Europe with the flotilla. So what is more important? So we work with media coverage. So that's important, and we cannot do without the legal system because we do fight legal warfare. We attack legal warfare and we use it. Okay, so we can. So there was an organization in Israel called in Hebrew, I'll translate in a second, Anarchistim ala Gadeh, which translates to anarchists on the fence. What they did, it was operational for more than I think 15 years, more than 10 definitely, and we brought them down. We put, I can't explain exactly how.
of
We
course.
gathered enough evidence to bring them down, and we did. We showed the Israel authorities, the police, the Justice Department. We showed everything that needs to be done, and they brought them down because there was enough evidence to show them to be criminals. Okay, so that's, and even if not criminals per se, enough to deter them. Let's say criminals allegedly, enough to deter them from working, and they just disbanded. So that's a win in our column.
Now, because as you said that you guys aren't the police, right? Do you guys ever face sort of internal resistance from Israeli police or Israeli state security?
Not really. We pretty much keep it a very tight ship. We do everything by the book, exactly because we know that if we slip just a little bit, a lot of nice people want to take advantage of that and bring us down. So we work really by the law. We don't do anything illegal, but what we do is, well, it is dangerous. It is undead, but it's not illegal. So they can't really bring us down, which frustrates them immensely and gives us a lot of pleasure knowing that.
And I'm assuming that not every, it's I feel like what you're doing is it takes a lot of planning, a lot of detail, and I'm sure that not everything you do is successful. I'm sure that there are times where, maybe you fall short. How do you learn from those experiences if you have any?
Yes, of course we do. It happens to every organization. You can't be right or win all the time. Like the same thing you do when you fail. You learn from your mistakes. We try to do it better. There is a lot of element of luck, which you cannot fight. It's just the way it is, like in war. Luck is a great thing to it, which we cannot control. It's up to God. But we don't give up. And I think that what separates us from a lot of organizations, good organizations who operate in Israel, is that we don't give up. And because of persistency, we actually do get things done. Even if we fail, we try and try again. Okay. So
Awesome.
again, because of the covert nature of our job, I can't get into specifics. It's
Of
not
course.
great for an interview, but it's
No,
just,
it's an honor to have somebody like this on my show, man. I was not expecting this today. The way your organization was described to me, it was described to me as mostly like, trying to extend sovereignty throughout Judea and Samaria. Um, that's how,
so yeah. So one of the things we target, so Judea Samaria is divided between 3 areas, A, B, and C. So A is all Palestinians, B is Palestinians with an Israel security in charge of whatever, and C is essentially, I live in an area in C. Okay, so it's in Judea and Samaria, and it's my street signs are in Hebrew. There's the Israeli law there, but we're not a part of Israel per se due to international law. Okay. So we do target people, and I'll give you an example. There are people who make a living going to shepherds, Jewish shepherds, like Moses did 4,000 years ago. We have pictures of it and films. All this, and we're talking about 14-year-old kids who go and, herd, livestock and goats. And they go there and they try to and they try to agitate them. So you can have it on picture, the 14-year-old boy striking and hitting the guy filming the picture, okay, filming the video, in order to undermine everything Israel's presence in Area C in Judea and Samaria. So we also are concerned about that. We are concerned about the way Hamas infiltrates Israel. We came up with a huge, let's sort of put it like a Watergate, okay, when we showed that Hamas funnels money through Israel NGOs to give to families of shaheeds in Gaza. We're talking about north of 40 million shekels. This is a lot of money.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
$15 million. Yes. So we target those, but what we mainly do is we try to figure out where's the most danger to the Jews and in Israel, and we go after the organizations that threaten them the most.
Mhm. Now, some people might watch this and say, oh, well, you probably just go after anybody who's critical of Israel. You probably don't have, a high standard for that. But I feel like if you're in the intelligence game, you must have a high standard. You're not just going after any regular person. You're going after people who are really intending harm and to undermine Israel. So what's that sort of like? How would you, I guess, identify a legitimate threat to Israel?
So that's a good question. So I'll start by saying that since we have a limited amount of time and also limited amount of resources, money, manpower, what name it, we have to really pick and choose our targets. I wish we could go after more people. That's the truth of it. So not only do I don't have enough time or money or manpower to go after anybody who criticizes Israel, even if I wanted to, I couldn't do it. That's answer number one. Answer number two is even if I could, I wouldn't. Why? Because criticizing Israel and its policies is fine. I criticize Israel. I don't like everything that's going on in my country. So it's the same in the United States. You don't like all your politicians. Even if you did vote for Trump, you don't like everything he's doing and anything like that. But what we do is we go after organizations which I think anybody who uses common sense as a vehicle to understand reality will understand that those organizations are here to hurt Jews, period. Not left-wing Jews, right-wing Jews, Jews who live in Judea and Samaria. When you go after the flotillas, or the BDS doesn't uh, distinguish between Israel inside the Green Line or outside the Green Line, Judea and Samaria. It doesn't matter. BDS goes after all Jews in Israel. So what we do to those who ask whether we just go after anybody who criticizes Israel is no, we don't. You can go to our website. You can see for yourself. You can post the link to our website. It is in English to see the organizations which we attacked. We attacked Hamas, which the last time I checked was not, criticizing Israel. We went after, excuse me, anarchists who used to, make the life of the Israelis and IDF and Judea and Samaria impossibly complicated. We did all of that. And again, you go to the site, you see all of those examples. So if anybody thinks that, listen to me talking to you and say, well, he's a right-wing fanatic, he's going after people, any leftist, that's not true. Just go to our site and see. Okay, that's an answer I would give to your listeners who
Perfect.
might raise that question or that
So,
concern.
so you talk about defending the Zionist character of the state of Israel. Can you expand on that?
Okay, so if you ask 10 Jews their opinions, you will probably get between 13 and 14 different opinions. Zionism, by definition, and I mean the really definition you should look in the dictionary, is making and maintaining a state where the Jews are the majority, which is a Jewish state. That is, so two things distinguishes Israel from other democracies. One is the only country in the world that has a majority of Jews. So if you go to the United States, there are Jews there. And, until very recently, all they weren't attacked for being Jews. They had the same right, like you have. You can go to the mall, you can open a bank account, you can join the army and be elected if you were born in the United States. In Israel, there's two differences. One is that the majority of Jews, and the other is that it's a, I'll try to say it in English, public Jewishness. I'll give you an example. You can go to any shop in the United States and buy a book in Hebrew. Assume you can do that. You won't see signs, road signs, Washington 20 miles ahead. In Israel, you would. If you come to Israel, all the street signs, everything in public is in Hebrew. One of my professors at university said that when his father came to Israel, he said it's amazing. He came from Europe. It's not that he didn't see writing in Hebrew. It's for the first time he saw major on billboard signs writing in Hebrew. So Zionism wants to maintain that. That is, being anti-Zionist is being anti that idea. That is being anti the Jewishness of the Jewish state, not only the majority, but also the Jewishness, which is exactly what the BDS wants to do. What the BDS wants to do is make Israel another country where Jews are either some segment of the population, but it's not special for Jews. You can speak Arabic in it, or Hebrew, or English, or any sort of that thing. So being anti-Zionist means that you're anti the most basic fundamental idea of the Zionist movement, which, by the way, listeners should know, was not, at least 50% of it were not Jewish. Lord Balfour and Lord George, all those evangelical Englishmen and evangelical Americans were all Christians. So 50% of the Zionist movement was not even Jewish. Okay. But the idea that maintaining a Jewish homeland in Israel and the idea that it should have a Jewishness and with a Jewish majority, that's the Zionists. And then they go after anybody who doesn't like that. Now, I don't mean that if you sit in your home and say, well, I don't like that idea, you'll be pinged on a radar. That's not the point. Do you actively try to hurt, physically hurt, harm Jews, kill them? Okay. Or do you want to give money to people who hurt them? That's who we go after.
Right. Right. Now, how long has the organization been running?
In 2011. So just
Okay,
shy of
long
15
time.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a short amount of time though. It's 14 years. Um, and how have things like how have things changed for you guys following October 7th?
So I want to give you like an elaborate answer, we sort of saw God again and started changing all of our organization. But the fact is that so much of the people working here were drafted to the army that, and I mean it from the head of the organizations, the guy who's now my boss, and all the way down. So people were hundreds of days in reserve duty. So what happened in October 7th, and we're just now recuperating, is we couldn't do much because everybody was in the war. There was no war like this in Israel. And I don't mean with casualties, but I mean that people would go, Israel usually has short wars. Other than the independent war, the bit longest one was, let's say, Yom Kippur, 3 weeks. It was like 4 months in 82, the first Lebanon war. People have been on for 2 years of war. I've been more than 400. That's insane. And so the organization suffered mainly manpower shortage. The second thing we noticed, which we're talking about right now, is anti-Semitism abroad. So if you look at the news today, let's say in campuses of universities in the United States, as a Jew, you feel terrified. You see something that has not been going on in the United States ever and hasn't been happening in Europe since the 1930s. Jews being attacked physically on campus. Uh, October 8th, we already have had demonstrations in the United States against Israel. October 8th, we were still burying bodies. People, I mean, it's insane. So we're trying to think right now, what can we do to help communities of Jews abroad?
Right,
Okay,
right.
because I don't think anybody, first of all, they're scared. Secondly, nobody else is picking up that glove, sort of, what do we do? So we're talking about that. So that's something of a mindset which changed after October 7th, which we thought that, a realization that even after October 7th, probably the safest place for Jews is Israel. Now, I can't say that for definite, but it's the only place where, Jews have been suffering from pogrom. Is that a word in English? Pogrom, like an attack on
I think
Jews where they
it's
live.
I mean, I know what it means, so I don't know if it's
Okay,
specifically an English word or a word that was borrowed from another language, but
yeah. So Jews have suffered pogrom since, since time immemorial. But this is the only place where after the end of the October 7th, I got my uniform on, I went inside my car, I put my vest on, put five magazines with 150, 556 bullets, and I could go back and fight. It's the only place where Jews have that, and we haven't had that since King Herod. That's 2,000 years. So the realization that even though we had a horrible attack upon us, horrible. I mean, I don't want to say it on your YouTube channel. The things that Jews suffered from those Hamas monsters on October 7th is unbelievable. I lost a friend who was the head of security in Kibbutz Nachal Oz. Uh, The stories are abundant. And even though I still feel better here than my family, I have family in the United States. Okay, all of my father's side family. And, it happened here, but I can fight. A Jew can pick up, is a Jewish soldier. I have the patch of the Israeli flag and the Israeli army on both sides. I fight as a Jewish soldier, and nobody in my ancestors could have done that for the past 2,000 years. And that is something that changed. It was a good realization after October 7th. Personally, um, there's a saying by, I think, John Locke, I can't be sure. Every man is responsible for all the good he didn't do. And it sits in the back of my head, and I keep waking up every day and thinking, what could I ever do to make sure that doesn't happen again? One of the reasons I came to work here is because I wanted to work for an organization that would help to stop that, for that not to happen again. So that's a personal realization that's changed.
And because, the facts are that we have two groups of people. We have the Israelis, the Jews, and then we have, the Arabs of Judea and Samaria. And there is this competing narrative. How does what do you see your group's role in this? Like, how much consideration is for the other side is taking sorry, I'm probably not wording that right. How much is taken into consideration for the other side, and um, how do you? I don't want to ask how you work with the other side because that's probably asking for a bit of delicate information. But um, I mean, what is generally the reaction of the other side to the things that you do?
Not positive.
Not positive, probably not. But you're not going to be able to please everybody. And at the end of the day, that the most important thing for an organization like yours is to protect Jews, because let's be honest, the hostility, the grotesque violence is really coming from one side, which is the other side.
That's
And so
correct.
my next question would be, um, how do you see your group evolving as time goes on? What would you say? Because I know that the sort of like the core of your function is counterintelligence and to thwart anti-Semites and people who want to do Israel harm. But is there a greater mission beyond that? Like, how do you see this conflict resolving, and how do you see your group playing a role in sort of the resolution of that conflict?
Okay, so I'll start personally. How do we resolution for this conflict? You mean the Muslim Jewish conflict?
I guess that's a good counter question. I'm currently reading No Retreat by Amir Avivi. I'm not sure if you
Okay,
know who he is. And
I know who he is.
so,
Okay.
and I've read this book by David Friedman called One Jewish State. My personal opinion is that there isn't enough room for two states between the river and the sea. And I think that it's not morally or ethically justifiable to add another Arab Muslim country.
I
So
understand.
I personally believe in Jewish sovereignty from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River. I'm not saying we have to evict, the other people who live there or treat them, with any ill intent or harm them, but I do believe that Israel should be a Jewish state and that it should have sovereignty over that land. And that the Arabs of Judea and Samaria, that they can have sort of their local autonomous rights, but voting rights, it'll be something else because they can vote for their own sort of local elections, but it will be Jewish sovereignty from the river to the sea. I want to I want to ask, how do you see your group playing a role in sort of fulfilling that mission, if it is a mission of yours?
Okay, so strictly okay, personally, I also want to have, one of my Jew to be a Jewish state from the river to the sea. Personally speaking, my group doesn't We don't do, let's say, political work. What we do, and I mean it, we fight those who harm Jews inside Judea and Samaria. We won't, one of our job descriptions, our mission statement doesn't include making all of Judea and Samaria under Jewish sovereignty, because like you said, we're a counterintelligence organization, counter-terrorism. Um, I, it should be interesting to mention that if the Arabs, Palestinian Arabs, by the way, it's a made-up term. Palestinians don't exist.
I agree.
But so if you look at it, so since 1967, they had like 4 or 5 times where the Israeli government said, please take a piece of land, Judea and Samaria and Gaza, make it a home and we can be good neighbors. Each and every time the Palestinians declined. And let's say in 2000, they also started an intifada. Ehud Barak, then the prime minister, offered them 95% of Judea and Samaria and having Jerusalem sort of an international, state capital, whatever. Not only did they reject that, because it was never, never. By the way, I believe this as I believe the sun will rise in the east tomorrow. It was never, ever Palestinian objective to have a state. Not once. The sole reason was for the Jews not to have theirs. Okay? The second all the Jews would die here, because all the Arabs massacred us, there wouldn't be a Palestinian state. It would just be a part of Syria or a part of Egypt or a part of Jordan. Okay? So personally, I don't think that there can be another state which is Palestinian. Let's say the United States wanted to take sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, and it will be a 51st state, and we can live next door to Americans. Probably would be a better idea. But since it's not on the table, the only other option is having 2 states. None of them, by the way, is Jewish. What the Palestinian wants is having an Arab state, Palestinian one, and an all citizen state, progressive mumbo jumbo in Israel. Okay? They don't want a Jewish state. So, one, it doesn't work. The idea that, and the second reason, and that's the main one, why it won't work, and if you're looking for a book recommendation, I strongly recommend Robert Spencer's book, Robert Spencer. I read 4 of his books. He's great. What are the Russians, Christians are called? I forget the name, like not Orthodox, Christian Orthodox, something. And he wrote great books.
I
Why
think
they
he's Greek
can never
Orthodox. I think he's Greek Orthodox.
Greek Orthodox. And
Yeah.
he said, and he's right, the word of Allah is supreme to a Muslim than anything else. Anything else. And you cannot give up a land which was once Muslim. You just can't do that because Allah said you can. Doing that is counter Allah. That's not fine. So no matter what me and you and what other country or government says, there can never be, not ever, be a Jewish state the size of a stamp on Tel Aviv beach. It would still be an object to destroy for Muslims, which is why there can never be peace. So the question itself is mute. I wish I could talk really about having a 2-state solution. It would never work because the other side doesn't want 2 states. They just want us not to exist. And we can't meet them halfway on that subject.
I agree with you 100% on that. I mean, even like if you go back into the early days of this conflict, the British, I think, Foreign Secretary Ernest Bevin said in the very early days of this conflict that the problem is that the Jewish people want to have a state anywhere on the land, and the Arabs are resisting to the last the idea of a Jewish state anywhere on the land. That is, whether you like it or not, the absolute core of the issue. Just to add on to your point, because I know you have I know we're sort of running out of time, but in 1947, when the UN handed down the partition plan, the Jews were so pragmatic that their 2 holiest cities, Jerusalem and Hebron, they agreed to leave it out of their control. Hebron would have been in what would have been the Arab state, and Jerusalem would have been an international city. So, to the people who say that the Jews refuse to coexist with the Arabs, it's a complete lie. The Jewish state that the Jews accepted under the partition plan would have had a sizable Arab minority, just like they have a sizable Arab minority right now, at least 20% of the Israeli population. So,
Correct.
Many, I really appreciate you coming on. I have one last question, okay?
Sure.
Uh, we have some viewers, and I want you to give a message to the viewers, particularly the anti-Semites.
We know who you are. We have people everywhere. You have no idea. And we're coming for you. My business card says, "We hunt anti-Semites." That's my message to the anti-Semites.
You heard that, anti-Semites? Everywhere. Manny, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Mike. You too. It's been an honor. God bless.
Hold on, don't sign off just yet. I have to stop
All right.
recording, and then it'll take a
Okay.
few seconds.
Sure.